While the rest of the country was waiting nervously for the presidential election results to come out, there is important news coming out of the Pentagon. According to The Independent on November 9th, 2020, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and other top Pentagon officials were fired by President Trump. Mark Esper claims that he was never a yes man for President Trump, and it's being widely assumed that President Trump asked Esper something that he did not want to do, and therefore was fired. So, with over a month left in the Donald Trump's presidency, we must ask ourselves the question: will President Trump take military action against Iran's nuclear weapons program before leaving office? And the clear answer is yes, because of President Trump's past record on Iran during his administration. We'll take a look at three key areas. First, ripping up the Iran nuclear deal. Second, assassinating Iranian leaders. And lastly, because there's no political consequence for him doing so. First though, we have to take a look at one of the biggest issues that first happened in the Trump administration in terms of Middle Eastern policy: ripping up the Iran nuclear deal. Now, under the Iran nuclear deal, which President Obama signed, it guaranteed that Iran would lower their uranium and nuclear weapons supply, as well as the U.S. It was seen as one of the biggest steps in ensuring a safe and peaceful relation between these two countries and the rest of the Middle East. However, according to Boston Globe on November 28, 2020, Trump in 2017, in one of his first acts against Iran, negotiated out of the Iran nuclear deal, saying that economic sanctions would be a better tool in order for Iran to cooperate with the United States. However, this has not worked as such. Since ripping it up, it has only been a disaster for President Trump and a big victory for Iran. According to BBC on December 2nd, 2020, since getting out of the Iran nuclear deal, Iran has started storing up and producing uranium at a faster rate than ever before. They have so many more nuclear weapons than when Trump left the deal, and this is angering them. Even though Trump left the Iran nuclear deal, he's still saying that this is an illegal act of Iran. President Trump will attack the Iran nuclear program because ripping up the Iran nuclear deal was him ripping up the diplomacy and negotiating of Iran in the future. However, we also have to take a look at real military action taken by the Trump administration. And one of the biggest points is him assassinating leaders of Iran. Now, according to 2020, at the very start of it, we were all saying that this was our year to shine. However, by the third day, the first thing trending on Twitter was World War III. According to Tehran Times on December 6, 2020, on January 3rd of this year, President Trump, without congressional approval or without any warning, assassinated military leader of Iran, General Qasem Soleimani. Soleimani was seen as the second biggest figure in Iran and led their entire military. And this was especially shocking as it came out of the blue. General Qasem Soleimani is an awful man, but this only highlighted and elevated tensions between these two countries. However, the water was said to be simmering for just a while, until recently. According to Al Jazeera on December 7th, 2020, in the late weeks of November, top Iranian nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was assassinated by someone that has connection to the United States military. It is not known yet whether it was just funding or an actual United States troop, but it's clear to see that President Trump is launching attacks against Iran and their leaders. He's completely gotten rid of diplomacy. But next time, it won't just be one person or one assassination. It'll be against the entire country of Iran when he attacks their nuclear weapons program. And lastly, we have to take a look at one of the biggest factors, or at least when looking at American politics. The fact that there are no repercussions, at least politically, of President Trump doing this. Now, war is a pretty unpopular thing. In the last 2 decades, going to war in the Middle East has been a death sentence for any politician. However, according to the New York Times on December 3rd, 2020, because President Trump lost the election and President Biden is moving into the White House, President Trump has to run for nothing else. Therefore, he can unleash all of his foreign policy plans that he wants to. And one of the top ones will be going to war against Iran. Because he has to run for nothing else, he has no fear of losing the election now. Therefore, he can do whatever he wants. And not only are there no political repercussions to him doing this, there are no repercussions to himself, as he doesn't have to stay. Additionally, according to NPR on December 4th, 2020, because President Trump is leaving office in little more than a month, it would not be a shock to see him launch an attack against the nuclear weapons program and pass off the office to Biden. By relinquishing control in just over a month, President Trump has ample things to do whatever he wanted to do. 4 years ago, he made a promise that he was not going to stand down to Iran. And now that he has to run for nothing else and he's shortly giving up office, he can finally make those foreign policy dreams come true and attack Iran's nuclear program. When looking at today's question, will President Trump take military action against Iran's nuclear weapons program before leaving office? It's clear to see that he will, because he has shown a tendency to do so by ripping out diplomacy by getting rid of the Iran nuclear deal. Second, by assassinating their military leaders and their scientists, and showing a provision of using military force before. And lastly, having no political consequences and the ability just to leave the office. While half the country was exciting and parading around the streets, and the other half of the country was calling election fraud, it was much more important to look into what was happening. And yes, while most of the country right now is focusing on the news of President-elect Biden's transition, it's also important to realize the consequences of having a few more weeks in office. He could start a war in the next few weeks, and we'd all have to be through it. It's important to remember that President Trump can do this because he has no reason not to, and he's closer to than any time in his previous presidency of the past 4 years.